Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've been following a story out of California about the safe deposit boxes in the private business, not in a bank, but in a private business. And the FBI raided the business, and they had a warrant to do that. And they seized the boxes that were in the business, even though those boxes were being rented by people unrelated to that business, other than the contractual relationship simply to rent the box. When the FBI got possession of the boxes, they then said, well, we have to inventory the boxes. And they inventoried the boxes. And they went through the inventory in the boxes. They said, hey, a lot of this stuff appears to be stuff that we could forfeit under civil asset forfeiture. So they started making noises about simply seizing the stuff and saying it's been forfeited. So a lot of the box owners then hired lawyers and went to court and filed suit. And so this has been working its way through the court system. And I've done a couple updates on this because it has appeared that the judge was leaning towards disagreeing with the FBI about whether what they're doing was correct. Well, the Los Angeles Times' Michael Finnegan reports the FBI breached the rights of the Beverly Hills safe deposit box holders. That's the judge's ruling, and here we are. Federal authorities have suffered 2 new court setbacks in their attempts to confiscate tens of millions of dollars seized from safe deposit boxes in Beverly Hills that the government was legally barred from searching. They weren't allowed to search them, but they were allowed to inventory them. So you've got this loophole which can swallow the rule. The Judge Klausner, U.S. District Judge, issued some rulings on Friday. He rejected the prosecutor's rationale for keeping the cash that 2 people had stored in boxes they rented at the company called U.S. Private Vaults. It was on West Olympic Boulevard. The FBI is trying to confiscate about $86 million in cash and millions more in jewelry and other valuables that the agents found when they searched the 369 boxes. I mean, they inventoried the 369 boxes. They based that on unspecified allegations of criminal wrongdoing conducted by the box holders. They basically said, look, this person's got cash. It's in a safe deposit box. It must be some kind of money that we can seize. Now, the warrants authorizing the raid back in March prohibited the government from searching what was inside the roughly 800 boxes that contained valuables because the FBI did not show that it had probable cause to believe that evidence of crimes would be found in each one. In the case of one box holder who sued the government, he's seeking to get the return of $914,000 in cash. The judge rejected the prosecutor's request to dismiss the case, saying the government had made no showing that there's anything illicit about the money. The government will take the position, you've got money. It must be that you've broken the law, and that money must be the result of some kind of criminal activity. It must be. And it's that weird, it's not even circular logic. It's hard to even use the word logic in a sentence that describes that. They simply say, you've got money, we can seize it. There's something wrong with you having money. Now, I know some people are going to say, Steve, who's got $914,000 in cash? Who cares? Now, this is what blows my mind. Whenever I mention something about the government cracking down on free speech, people go, Steve, First Amendment, and people go nuts. But when I talk about civil asset forfeiture, I always get some people who go, yeah, but come on, who's got $914,000 in cash? I wish I did. If I had that kind of cash, I'd be happy I had it. I wouldn't be ashamed of it. I wouldn't advertise it. I might put it in a safe deposit box. I don't know. One of the beautiful things about property is if you own something, you can do what you want with it, right? So I've mentioned before, I've got a widget. I can sell the widget. I can keep the widget. I can take the widget out back and smash it with a sledgehammer. It's my widget. So if this money is yours, you can put it in a safe deposit box. You can invest it in certificates of deposit. You can invest it in collateralized debt obligations. I don't care. The point is, it's your money. You can do what you want with it. Now, if the government's got evidence and proof that you stole the money and they can prove it, they can go to court and try to prove it. But the idea that they say, well, you've got money, you prove to us how innocent your money really is backwards. So let's not even go there, sister. In the case of another box holder, the judge gave the government 7 days to return his money or provide an adequate explanation for its attempted confiscation. That man I've mentioned before is an unemployed food service worker from Los Angeles who stored his life savings in cash in the box. He had $57,000 saved up. That's all the money he had, and he kept it in that box because he lost faith in the banks, I believe, during one of the recent crises that we had financially. The judge found that the facts and the law clearly favor that man in his claim that the government violated his rights by seizing and refusing to return the cash. The government has failed to provide any justification for holding the cash, the judge wrote. The judge said it was troubling that the man had declared in a sworn statement that he desperately needs the money for food and medicine, and he's currently living off canned foods that he stockpiled during the pandemic. So luckily, while keeping his cash in a safe deposit box, he'd stockpiled emergency food in case something happened. What happened? The government seized his cash. So in March, the federal grand jury indicted U.S. Private Vaults, that's the company that had these boxes, on charges of conspiring with its customers to sell drugs, launder money, and structure financial transactions to dodge detection by the government. But the only customers identified by prosecutors so far are a Drug Enforcement Administration agent working undercover and some unnamed government informants. So they basically say, look, we're convinced they're working with these bad people, except the only bad people we've identified are informants. And obviously they're doing this on our behalf. Have you identified anybody who's not working for you breaking the law? No, not yet. The FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles claim that most of the people who stored valuables anonymously were criminals, but have declined to specify the crimes they allegedly committed or to actually reveal the evidence they have that could possibly be true. FBI spokesperson referred questions to a spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office who declined to comment. So you've got one spokesperson referring you to another spokesperson, neither of whom will speak. You've got one job when you're spokesperson. Guess what it is? When FBI agents and prosecutors initially asked for permission to rip all the safe deposit boxes out of the walls, U.S. magistrates set strict limits. The FBI could seize the boxes, but had to return the contents to the owners. That magistrate wrote in his authorization, this warrant does not authorize a criminal search or seizure of the contents of the safe deposit boxes. So the magistrate's own words told the FBI you cannot do what they went and did. The man who had his money taken, who's a food service worker, is skeptical about the FBI returning his money. He said, I can't really get my hopes up too high. If they can just straight up step on our Constitution and wipe their feet on it, they just can't be trusted. His words, not mine. A previous ruling from the same judge blocked the government's forfeiture of cash, gold, and silver belonging to 4 box holders, including the man I just mentioned, who have all sued the government. Now, that man's attorney said it shouldn't take a class action suit to get the FBI to respect the Fourth Amendment. But guess what? It probably will. So we call on the FBI to give up its $85 million cash grab and give people their stuff back, the attorney said. In the other case on which the judge ruled Friday, an assistant U.S. attorney, who is the prosecutor in charge of the investigation, asked the judge to dismiss the suit brought by a box holder using a pseudonym who is seeking the return of more than $914,000 in cash. The assistant attorney said that man was a wealthy person living in the U.S. who has the means to hire a large law firm to do his bidding and spend well over $1,000 a year to store items anonymously at U.S. private vaults. The judge wrote, this argument is misguided. Though plaintiff may indeed be a wealthy person, plaintiff is also a person living in the United States and is therefore afforded the protections of the U.S. Constitution. And I get that question a lot from foreigners. People in other countries contact me and say, Steve, I'm curious. If I travel in America, does the Constitution apply to me? And if you look at the Constitution, it often says that people or persons have rights. It doesn't limit that to citizens. It actually says persons. So you've got the same rights when you're traveling here. So the fact that this person is a wealthy person who can hire an attorney should not be held against him. The assistant attorney argued that the customer should be required to identify himself or herself to the FBI so the government can investigate whether the cash was legally acquired. The judge agreed with the plaintiff that the government was trying to force the plaintiff to choose between loss of the Fourth Amendment protection on unreasonable searches and seizures and loss of the Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination. And here's the bigger problem with that. The government says, we think this money was illegally gotten. And the judge says, what's your evidence? They go, we don't have it yet, but identify the person who's got the money so we can work on this. Well, that by definition means you haven't got any evidence. If you need to investigate to find the evidence, you must not have the evidence. And the mere existence of that money is not in and of itself a crime. And it doesn't prove a crime. There are people, I hate to break the news to you, there are people in this country who've got money that they got legally, and they just chose not to put it in a bank. You don't have to. Go back to people who lived through the Depression. See how many of them trusted banks and find out what many of them did with their cash. And although they might not have stuffed $914,000 underneath their mattress, factoring for inflation, some of them may have put amounts quite large, stashed around their house. The judge also rejected the government's argument that plaintiff could proceed anonymously. The judge said, yeah, this person can proceed anonymously. There's no reason that you can't come into court under certain circumstances and have an attorney on your behalf say, I represent this person, and we're not going to reveal their name if we don't have to. And the judge says, you don't have to. So whether plaintiff is wealthy or poor, a criminal or a model citizen, to require plaintiff to self-identify would leave plaintiff vulnerable to the investigatory powers of the federal government. The judge also said the government had made no showing that there's anything illicit about the property it seized. So that's really, I think, what this turns on more than anything else. Because obviously somebody saying, here's my name. Oh, now we've got a case against you. No. It's more about what do they know about this money. If they could prove this money was fruit of a crime, then yeah, we might have the right to find out who has it because that would connect them to a crime. The argument would be better. Let's suppose that you had an extremely rare coin, 1933 $20 gold piece. There weren't that many of them minted that survived. They actually made quite a few of them, but most of them were melted later. 1933 $20 gold piece. So there's very few of them in the world, and they know where most of them are. They think they know where all of them are, but there could be a few more floating around out there. Let's suppose that one got stolen. Boom, gone. And when they go through these boxes, they find one. And they go, wait a second. One got stolen. There one is. There's a good chance that this is the stolen $20 gold piece. In that case, I suspect the judge would say, you know something? Since that's likely connected to a crime, you'd have the right then to find out who has it. But it's another argument altogether. But here it's simply a pile of cash. There's no evidence that the cash is guilty of anything, so there's no need to identify who's got it. The attorney for the plaintiff, who is being anonymous, called the ruling very significant as the government continues to fight a dozen other lawsuits over its seizure of the safe deposit boxes. The judge ruled quite clearly the government cannot take a citizen's property and use it as a hostage to enable the government to investigate that person. The judge flatly rejected that idea and has said that the citizen has no obligation to provide the government any information to help the government in its investigation of that person. So the weird thing about this is that there are still about a dozen other lawsuits going on. You would think that when the FBI or the federal government gets hit with one bad ruling, they say, you know something, we're done. But no, it looks like they're going to fight all of these tooth and nail. And then what happens if you get different rulings from different judges? Weird things can happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if something this large winds up going up on appeal. So you might find yourself in front of the Ninth Circuit somewhere down the road, and possibly even SCOTUS. But what I think is going to be the strongest argument the plaintiffs have got, the people who had the stuff in the boxes, is that the magistrate's own order said you can take possession of the structure, that is the nest that all these boxes were in. You can take possession, but you cannot dig through those boxes looking for evidence of a crime. And that's what it looks like they did. But we'll see what happens as they continue to litigate it. But as of right now, I'd say it's about the fourth or fifth inning, and the plaintiffs are ahead about 7-0. Just making up numbers here. But they've got a healthy lead, but the game is far from over, unfortunately, But as of right now, the most recent ruling sent to me by a lot of people, including Phil, Romney, George, Doug, Tom, and Troy, thanks a lot, from the LA Times, Michael Finnegan, the FBI breached the rights of Beverly Hills safe deposit box holders, a judge rules. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. You can't move mountains by whispering at them.